WarGames, 1983, is far more than a piece of entertainment. It is an early warning bell for the digital age. The film tells the story of a brilliant teenager, a keyboard, a telephone line, and an innocent-looking computer screen that nearly triggers a global nuclear catastrophe. Beneath the beeping of modems and the tension of the Cold War lies a series of dramatic behind-the-scenes stories, from mid-production director changes to events that reportedly shook even the White House itself. Below are 10 strange and fascinating facts about WarGames, the film that turned keystrokes into the equivalent of pulling a trigger. 1. The fusion of two completely different ideas, from genius to digital mistake. The origins of WarGames bear little resemblance to the cyber thriller we know today. In fact, the original screenplay was an unusual hybrid of two entirely separate and somewhat incompatible concepts. Screenwriter Lawrence Lasker was initially captivated by the image of Stephen Hawking, a towering intellect trapped within a fragile body, racing against time to communicate his final insights. Meanwhile, his collaborator Walter Parkes was developing a very different narrative, the story of a restless teenage prodigy, misunderstood and isolated by the adult world around him. These two ideas were awkwardly combined into an early draft titled The Genius. But a pivotal turning point came when the writers conducted research at the Stanford Research Institute. There, they encountered a rapidly emerging subculture. Early hackers who could manipulate systems and access hidden networks using nothing more than lines of code. This discovery fundamentally reshaped the story. They realized that the true engine of the narrative was not the wisdom of an aging intellectual, but the reckless curiosity of youth. The film pivoted dramatically, from a tribute to genius into a cautionary tale about potentially catastrophic mistakes. The thread involving the aging scientist faded into the background, replaced by a world of screeching modems, flickering green text, and a teenager who unknowingly turns typing into an act as dangerous as launching a nuclear weapon. This shift in focus ultimately transformed WarGames into a pioneering work that helped define the techno-thriller genre for decades to come. 2. The battle for recognition in Hollywood, when reality surpassed fiction. Even as the script began to take shape, bringing WarGames to the big screen proved to be an uphill battle filled with skepticism from Hollywood executives. In the early 1980s, the concept of a teenage hacker film simply did not exist within the industry's framework. To studio decision-makers, films fell into clear categories: explosive war epics, rebellious coming-of-age stories, or science fiction filled with sleek spacecraft and distant futures. WarGames existed awkwardly between these definitions. It featured military-scale stakes without a battlefield and cutting-edge technology without the spectacle of traditional sci-fi. Many producers feared that labeling a computer-based story as science fiction would alienate audiences, making it feel too abstract or implausible. However, real-world events unexpectedly validated the film's premise. News reports surfaced about a chilling incident in which the U.S. military nearly initiated a nuclear alert due to a training simulation tape mistakenly left running in a live system. Overnight, WarGames transformed from a strange and uncertain project into a gripping reflection of a very real danger. It exposed the terrifying fragility of global peace in an age increasingly governed by machines and algorithms. Recognizing its newfound relevance, investors made a bold decision. The film's budget was increased from $8 million to $12 million. This additional funding was not merely allocated to star salaries, but primarily invested in constructing large-scale military sets, bringing authenticity and weight to a story that suddenly felt all too possible. What began as a misunderstood concept ultimately became a landmark film, one that signaled the dawn of the digital era and redefined how cinema could explore the invisible threats of technology. 3. The director fired after 2 weeks, a purge to save the film's soul. Few people realize that the very soul of WarGames was nearly suffocated by a misguided artistic vision in its earliest days of production. The original director entrusted with the project was Martin Brest, who would later gain fame for Beverly Hills Cop. However, his approach clashed fundamentally with the spirit of the screenplay. Brest envisioned WarGames as a dark, heavy, and somber film, one that would immerse audiences in the cold, oppressive atmosphere of nuclear war from the very first scene. This interpretation unintentionally stripped away what made the story compelling: the playful curiosity, mischievous intelligence, and youthful energy of the protagonist, David, a gifted teenager who stumbles into a global crisis. When the writers and producers witnessed their creative vision being reshaped into a bleak and overly serious drama, the studio made a shocking and ruthless decision, one that was virtually unheard of in Hollywood at the time. After just 2 weeks of filming, Martin Brest was dismissed. It was an extraordinarily risky move. Replacing a director mid-production not only threatened significant financial losses, but also risked destabilizing the entire cast and crew. Yet, this drastic action proved necessary. It was the price required to restore the film's intended tone. Bringing in a new director allowed WarGames to regain its delicate balance between the high-stakes tension of the Cold War and the vibrant, unpredictable energy of youth. That bold purge ultimately saved the project from becoming a dry, documentary-like drama, and instead transformed it into a gripping, dynamic, and enduring techno-thriller. 4. John Badham and the Rescue of Tone, reviving the script's vitality. When John Badham stepped in to replace Martin Brest, the production was in a state of uncertainty and creative disarray. Badham's first, and most crucial, decision was to bring the original writers back into the fold. They had previously been sidelined during the earlier creative conflicts, and he understood that restoring the screenplay's soul was essential to saving the film. His cinematic instincts were precise and insightful. Badham recognized that WarGames could only succeed if it began with a lighter tone, infused with humor, curiosity, and the reckless spirit of youth. Rather than plunging the audience immediately into a suffocating atmosphere of global crisis, he chose to introduce David as an intelligent, playful teenager driven by curiosity. The audience needed to like him, to relate to him, to see him as just a kid experimenting with technology before fully grasping the terrifying consequences of his actions. This tonal recalibration made the film far more accessible and emotionally engaging. It created the necessary narrative space for tension to build gradually, escalating step by step alongside the ominous logic of the WOPR supercomputer. Under Badham's direction, WarGames shed the weight of a heavy political drama and emerged as a finely balanced thriller, one that captivated audiences with both its suspense and its humanity, holding their attention until the very final moment. 5. Matthew Broderick's transformation into a hacker when an amateur gamer conquered the screen. At just 20 years old, Matthew Broderick was still a relatively fresh face, known more for his work on stage than for major film roles. Interestingly, he did not land the role of David through the usual high-pressure audition process. Instead, he caught the producer's attention through a recorded performance from an entirely different project. What immediately stood out was his unique presence, a compelling blend of sharp intelligence, youthful arrogance, and an underlying innocence. It was precisely this balance that made him perfect for portraying a teenage prodigy who accidentally stumbles into a global nuclear crisis. To fully embody a computer wizard, Broderick underwent an unusual form of preparation. The production team installed arcade machines in his home, requiring him to spend 2 full months practicing relentlessly. The goal was to ensure that his body language, hand movements, eye focus, and reflexes felt authentic, like someone completely at ease in front of a screen, treating it as his natural domain. Yet behind the scenes lies an ironic truth. Despite playing a character capable of infiltrating the world's most secure systems, Broderick himself was a remarkably slow typist. To preserve the illusion of speed and expertise, director John Badham relied on clever camera angles and precise editing techniques. Through this combination of personal effort and cinematic craftsmanship, Broderick delivered a definitive portrayal of David, one that helped shape the archetype of the young, brilliant hacker in popular culture for decades to come. 6. The rise of Jennifer, from background presence to true partner. In the earliest drafts of WarGames, the character Jennifer, played by Ally Sheedy, was initially conceived as a classic girl next door figure typical of 1980s cinema. Her role was limited and largely passive, existing mainly to react to David's actions or to highlight his intelligence. However, a turning point emerged during filming when the director and producers witnessed the remarkable on-screen chemistry between Sheedy and Matthew Broderick. Their interactions felt natural, vibrant, and emotionally engaging, far beyond what had been envisioned on paper. Recognizing this unexpected dynamic, the filmmakers made a decisive adjustment. Jennifer was no longer treated as a peripheral character. She was rewritten with greater depth, agency, and personality. From a passive observer, she evolved into an active participant, a true partner who supports David emotionally and helps him make critical decisions as they race against time. This transformation played a crucial role in elevating the film. Jennifer's expanded presence added a human dimension that prevented WarGames from becoming a cold, purely technical narrative. Instead, the story became a shared journey, two teenagers navigating fear, responsibility, and friendship while confronting a global threat embodied by the WOPR supercomputer. Thanks to this thoughtful evolution, the film resonated more deeply with audiences. It wasn't just about the looming danger of nuclear war. It was about the emotional stakes, the bond between two young people, and their struggle to do the right thing in the face of overwhelming consequences. 7. John Lennon and the lost role of Dr. Falcon, a cinematic what-if filled with regret. In the behind-the-scenes history of WarGames, there exists a little-known revelation that continues to fascinate film historians. The production team once hoped to cast John Lennon as Dr. Stephen Falcon, the reclusive father of the WOPR supercomputer. Imagine the symbolic magnitude this would have carried. The man holding the key to preventing nuclear annihilation portrayed by one of the world's most powerful voices for peace. Lennon was reportedly intrigued by the script's timely and philosophical themes. However, his tragic assassination in December 1980 permanently erased any possibility of this extraordinary collaboration between music and cinema. Forced to pivot, the filmmakers ultimately cast John Wood in the role. While he lacked Lennon's global celebrity aura, Wood delivered something arguably more fitting for the film's tone. His portrayal of Dr. Falcon was steeped in quiet exhaustion, a genius worn down by time, burdened by regret, and haunted by the unintended consequences of creating a technological monster. This casting decision, though born out of necessity, ultimately gave the film a deeper psychological resonance. Wood's heavy gaze and contemplative delivery in the final scenes transformed Falcon into a powerful symbol of human accountability, an embodiment of conscience awakening within a world increasingly governed by cold, indifferent systems. 8. Joshua, the voice within the machine and the haunting echo of a digital soul. The chilling line, "Shall we play a game?" spoken by the WOPR supercomputer, known as Joshua, has become one of the most iconic and unsettling phrases in cinematic history. It carries a paradoxical tone, polite, almost childlike, yet laced with an invisible threat capable of ending humanity. During production, filmmakers debated intensely whether such an advanced military computer should even have a human voice. Ultimately, the director made a bold and symbolic choice. Joshua would speak using the voice of John Wood, the same actor portraying Dr. Falcon. This subtle decision suggested that a fragment of the creator's mind, his logic, his pain, perhaps even his moral conflict, remained embedded within the machine itself. Joshua was no longer just a system. It became an echo of its creator's consciousness. Yet the challenge was ensuring the voice didn't sound too human. To achieve this uncanny effect, the sound team employed a painstaking analog technique. John Wood was instructed to read his lines with the word order reversed. These recordings were then manually cut, rearranged, and reconstructed into coherent sentences. The result was a voice that felt almost human, but not quite. Its rhythm was unnatural, its emotional cadence subtly off, creating a dissonance that unsettled the listener at a subconscious level. That eerie imbalance became the key to Joshua's presence, a voice suspended between logic and life, between machine precision and human fragility. And it is precisely this ambiguity that made Joshua so terrifying, not because it sounded mechanical, but because it sounded almost human. 9. The $1 million War Room. When cinema made the military feel upstaged. When the budget for WarGames was increased, the filmmakers chose to invest heavily in one element they knew could not be faked halfway: the NORAD War Room. This was not merely a film set. It was an engineering marvel constructed on a massive soundstage at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. With a price tag of $1 million, an astonishing and record-breaking sum for an interior set in the early 1980s, it became the beating heart of the film's tension. The design team installed dozens of large-scale video screens, an intricate synchronized projection system, and even incorporated cutting-edge computer graphics hardware from Hewlett-Packard to generate real-time tactical maps. The result was so immersive and convincing that even real U.S. Air Force officers were reportedly stunned when they saw it. According to industry anecdotes, some NORAD officials reacted with a mix of admiration and envy, remarking, "If Hollywood can make a command center look this advanced and sleek, why does our real facility seem so outdated and modest?" This extraordinary investment did more than deliver visual spectacle. It grounded the film in a chilling sense of realism. The War Room transformed abstract data into suffocating tension, making audiences believe that global annihilation could hinge on nothing more than a technical miscalculation. 10. Shaking the White House. When cinema forced President Ronald Reagan to act. The true impact of WarGames extended far beyond box office success or critical acclaim. It triggered a political shockwave at the highest level of power, the White House. In June 1983, after watching the film at Camp David, President Ronald Reagan did not dismiss it as mere fiction. Instead, visibly unsettled, he turned to his top national security advisors and asked a pivotal question. Could something like this really happen in real life? The response he received was deeply alarming. Military and technical experts reportedly confirmed that such a scenario was not only plausible, it was, in their words, a matter of when, not if. That answer immediately set in motion a chain of real-world consequences. Shortly thereafter, Reagan signed the first national security directive focused on computer and communication security, formally recognizing cybersecurity as a critical national concern. The film's influence did not stop there. It directly contributed to the creation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act in 1986, a foundational piece of legislation addressing cybercrime. Few films in history have achieved such a tangible impact, transforming from entertainment into a wake-up call that forced global leaders to confront the hidden dangers of emerging technology. The decline of reboot attempts, when legacy becomes a barrier. Despite its enduring legacy, every attempt to revive the WarGames franchise for modern audiences has struggled to recapture the original's impact. The sequel, WarGames: The Dead Code, was released quietly on DVD and quickly faded into obscurity, lacking the depth and cultural resonance of its predecessor. Even the ambitious interactive reboot launched in 2018 failed to generate significant momentum or reignite widespread public interest. Perhaps the enduring power of WarGames lies in the unique historical moment of 1983, a time when computers were still mysterious, almost magical machines. That sense of innocence and discovery, combined with the looming dread of the Cold War, created an atmosphere that modern technology, no matter how advanced, cannot replicate. Today, the film stands as a timeless legend precisely because it transformed youthful curiosity into global terror. It left behind a haunting lesson about nuclear conflict, one that echoes through its final message. The only winning move is not to play,